Hello. Hello all, I hope you're doing very well. Here we are at Heathrow Terminal 4 in Colimata Concorde's brand new Concorde V3 for Xplane 12. I love this aircraft and I wanted to make a tutorial on it, on how to fly it the way I do, so that you guys can all enjoy it just as much as I do, and make use of the fantastic product that they've made over at Colimata. So we're here probably at the most beautiful time of day you can be in Xplane 12, a lovely sunrise here at Heathrow's airport. We're flying the Concorde flagship livery, which you can download from a forum. This is a V2 livery, which works on V3. So they all work on V3, so you can port your liveries across straight with no problems. And today we'll be flying from Heathrow to JFK. Now, normally we'd go on SimBrief and generate a flight plan through there. But, you see, you don't want to see that. But you see, now, for Concorde, because we break the sound barrier, if we were above supersonic airliners, they may have a supersonic boom and there'd be disruptions, and we'd be slowed down in our climb often because it's quite busy. So Concorde got given its own transatlantic route. Now, if you head over to my Discord server, that one, there we go. You head over to my Discord server. In the Discord server, we have the Concorde's route information page. On here, we have posted a long list with all the information here. But at the top here, we have Heathrow to JFK. It has all the routes going, all the different directions in here. What you want to do to get your route for your flight today is to copy this raw route that's here. You can just Control-C it, pop up SimBrief. SimBrief's popped up. Put in EGL to KJFK into SimBrief. Wait for it to do this little loading thing. Once it starts sorting itself out, there we go. Then their route look will take us through a pretty standard track. We don't want that. Delete that. Put in ours. Get it to analyze it. There we go. So you can see it's a little bit more further south than it would be for some aircraft. Just keeps us out. Means we can accelerate much faster over the Bristol Channel rather than heading up north. Of course, today speedbird 1. And then you're going to have to select a random aircraft. So for me, I'm going to select a random A300. It's irrelevant what we're going to be doing, so that's fine. What you do want to remember is it's 3,100 nautical miles. That's what you want to remember for our flight distance today on SimBrief, as we'll need that in a bit. From there then, go and smash generate. Once it's generated, we're all good. There we go. It's calculating all the stuff. There's not much for us today, but once it's calculated that, we are good to continue with our startup. So there we go. So we'll be using this for Vatsim later on. So we'll need this in a bit. What you can then do, if you're on Vatsim like I am today, we're going to be hitting the pre-file on the Vatsim button at the bottom, and we will be doing the rest from there. But that's about it then. I wanted to quickly just show you guys that one, as that when I first started, that kind of stumped me a bit. As we will be coming back to that again because it's got some helpful little bits of bobs for us. But that's how you get it on Waypoint. And then all you want to do is when you file, like I'm just doing out here, just change the aircraft type to Concorde and set the altitude up to 60,000 feet. And then change the speed and everything. There we go. Right. There we go. That's our flight plan filed on Vatsim. Right. So now we've done that, we want to head over to our GUI before we even hop in the flight deck here. We've got a couple of other bits and bobs we're doing. So GUI, they've updated this in V3, but it still is pretty similar to the old V2 version. So we need to go, first thing is go into settings, turn on Pro Features. This gives us the full usage of the GUI and everything we have available in there. Gives us more accurate fuel systems, and so it's really important for everything we're going to do today. So make sure you turn on Pro mode. Brilliant. Once we've done this then, we can go back, save that. Now, in the flight preparation phase, we have our payload and fuel manager. You want to do this first before you do the aircraft with its vehicles, because it'll jump around once you put some fuel and stuff in, and you will lose your vehicles. So it's worth doing this first. Hello, everyone. Sorry, my bad. I faffed around for about half an hour there trying to figure out stuff. It's more simple than I thought. You don't need to load a route if you don't want to. For today's flight, I won't be loading a route, as our flight doesn't require it. However, if we dial back the fuel here using here, you can just minus on any of these boxes. It doesn't really make a difference. See there, it says the range. That means we're too short, so just increase it slightly more. And there we go, about 89.4 tons a day. So if we apply there, go to the payload manager setting, add some passengers on board our aircraft today, as we not quite full, it's only a business flight today, although Concorde is quite popular, so why don't we slap a couple more people in there. And then we just apply there. Make sure you go back to the fuel manager page as the fuel will have reset. So once you do the payload, apply that, then come back here and apply that finally there. And now go back, go to aircraft, doors and ground, and now we can sort out the rest of our aircraft. That's all we needed to do. So GPU connected, just click in the GPU, catering with the door, stairs, service fan, and we'll go with that for now. Fantastic. So our GUI prep is now all complete. Let's swap in the flight deck. Bit dark today, we'll get some lights on, but basically we have checklists kindly provided by Colimata here. I've used saved camera views, which I'm cycling through with my keyboard. I made a YouTube video on that, so you can go check that out if you'd like to also use this, but there are default ones you can use clicking down here. The safety checklists that come along with this aircraft are quite good. I find them very comprehensive. However, I'm going to deviate slightly as a couple of bits it's missed and a couple of bits I do in a slightly different order, just for ease of access and use. But essentially, the rest of it's fine. Technical log is good. We connected our ground power, so hop into the back, and our main batteries can go on. That's these two here. Main batteries are on. Our equipment bay cooling switches are up here, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Click them twice on those ones, and then these last three just once. So that's equipment bay cooling. The oxygen panel is a little bit tricky to reach. It's just down here on the right side. We'll click that up like that. Drain master heaters need to go on. That's on the overhead in the flight deck here. Let me get some lights on, guys, so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. Drain master heaters, these three here. 1, 2, 3. Drain master heaters are on. And the air data computers, that's on the pedestal here, these two. Now before I go any further, we've got to do some INS stuff, but I'm just going to get those lights on. I was trying to fly at sunset, you know, because it's a beautiful time of day to fly at, but it would appear quite dark. So let's turn on that one. Get the nice glare shield going on. There we go, we'll leave that later. That's a bit better, then we can see a bit more of what we're doing. Fantastic. Quite a dark cockpit in Concorde, actually. That's right. So, once we've done this, what we need to do now is head into the back here. Oh, we'll get his pal some lighting. There we go. So, we now have to use our... Oh, we've got to do our smoking signs first. And now our nav light. And we are good to go. So, we now have to do our INS. So this is where I deviate from the checklist slightly. It wants to do the rest of it first. Because your INS takes 10 minutes to align, I do this bit first. So we're going to put the INS over here. These are our 3 INSs. Just hidden by the chair there. So we've got 1, 2, and 3. So we put them all into standby and head down to our INS panel, which is just down here off the flight deck. We can see it's powered up now. And if we head to the POS position, we can see it's got a number. Now this is our current position in Xplane 12. You would have to program this in normally, but fortunately in Xplane 12 it comes pre-programmed for your current location, so we don't have to worry about that. So I know that's my same location, so that's good. So if we head back to our INSs in the engineering panel, we can set them all to align. We'll get a nice little white light telling us they're aligning there, and they're starting to do their thing. So there you go, connecting up to Vatsim. As the INS begin their alignment, we can continue on with our startup. So again, I'm going to change it slightly here from these checklists just because I find it helpful to do the INS stuff first and then get on with the rest of our flying of the aircraft, as it were. So we have to do some programming of our INS. Now this is where SimBrief once again comes in handy. So if we bring up SimBrief from the far right here, we can see on the flight plan with the Lido setting, we're going to have the coordinates. So here we are, all the waypoints here. Compton, Malby, Cassup, these are all our waypoints that were on the flight plan. Because if we look down at our thing, it's not like a normal FMS. This is an INS computer, so it has the position of the aircraft, and it has waypoint and distance and time setting. If we head to the waypoint setting, we can see that this is looking for coordinates of waypoints. We have a scroller here, which goes up to 1 to 9. Now, you may be thinking, well, our flight today's got more than 9 waypoints, and it has. We've got 18 today. But I like to think of our INS system as a circle of numbers. We go around like this, all our different numbers going round the outside of this circle. I've had to draw this a couple of times now. Anyway, we go around the side. So once we finish waypoint 9, we just go 9 to 1 and can go back round. And we reprogram them as waypoint 10, 11, 12, 13, so on, going around the circle. So that's how we're going to be using our INS systems today. But because... oh, I've dragged that off oddly. But because we need our coordinates for that, we can pull them up from SimBrief. So going on SimBrief, our first waypoint to down route is Compton, as you can see here. And there, lovely, this is why we did SimBrief, our waypoints. We've got the north and the west. We're going to program them into our computer now. I've written them down, and I recommend you do this too, as it makes things a lot easier. So first waypoint today is Compton. So we click the north, the 2 for the north selection on here. If you were south, you could click the 8 for the south. It's going to be north 5, 1, 2, 9, just north 5. And again here, we're going to click west. There we go. And you do the west selection before you start typing. And it's west 1132. And that's Compton done. We have our next waypoint today, Malby. Same process. Select the north. Even if it's already selected on north, you have to click it as you make your... you have to confirm that that is your desired one, so the aircraft is flying the exact route. That's number 2. I'm just going to keep cycling through. We've got Kessup next. 5119. 5. And it's west 00339. And it's point 3. We've got waypoint 4 next, Merley, which is north 5120. Point 0. Zoom out slightly here. And it's going to be west 005000. Brilliant. We've got waypoint 5 after that, and that's Leslie, north 5100. Point 0. West 00800. So I'm just programming the first 9 waypoints on this list. That's all I'm doing here. I'm taking the coordinates of them, and I'm just programming them into my INS system. If you make a mistake, just click clear, and you have to go again from the very beginning of that waypoint. Just don't worry, you don't have to do the whole thing again. And we'll cover later how to put in the rest of them, but you have to do that during the flight, unfortunately. So we'll just get to that when we get there. But yeah, that's the plan for today. Take it slow with these ones, it can get a little bit laggy. You don't want to mess up on your clicking. And finally our waypoint 9. So this route is the one Concorde flew on its transatlantic route westbound. There's a different one for the eastbound to keep the aircraft separate. There we go, we put in our 9 waypoints. So now we put in our 9 waypoints. I like to think that the INS sort of initial phase of startup is pretty much complete. If you wanted to now to save for frame rate, you could certainly close SimBrief, as we won't be... or no, keep it open actually, sorry, we will be using that later. Fantastic. Right. Let me just sort myself up. Okay, brilliant. So we've done our INS programming. We are all pretty good. We'll now complete up the rest of our start. So we've got our master CBs. We need to check and set them. So we then have our cockpit preparation, and our oxygen is all good. We can do a quick test with that. Here it all breathes. It's quite good. DV windows are closed. Flight control inverters all go on. So that's all up here. So flight control inverters and the anti-seal systems are up here. So we've got all these flight controls to turn on. These are all the systems. You can see you'll get a couple of warning lights going out. Anti-seal systems go on. Then they check the RAD INS switch. That's this one. I'm going to set that set to RAD. Looking over to the right, we check his is set to RAD too. It is. That's all good. Instrument transfer switches. That is this big stack of switches over here. Make sure they're on the captain's side. They don't have to be, but better if it's on there, your side. Altimeters then for Heathrow today. Let me just check. I think it's about 301021. So we'll go with that. Audio Com 1 panel. So that's this button here. Click that one, and then tune up whatever you want. So it's going to be Unicom for my flight today. So this is how you use the radios. You dial like that, set them up. Notice it's got an 05 there. I'm not sure why, but it has. Anyway, right, so we do that bit. Once we've done that, we set our stuff. We've done our audio panels. The nav radios are all good. That's these ones down here. We can check them if you want. We can tune up London 1113.6. We'll use that later. You can see it's got it up, so they're all working well. Into the back then, our ground hydraulic switches are set off. Off on the top there. Off, off. And our engine recirculation valves need to be shut. That's, if I look down here, that's these ones. They are shut. Our secondary doors we're taking off with reheat today, very much. 2, 3, 4. They go on, and our fuel heaters, I missed one, needs to go to auto. That's these ones here. They go to auto. That's that first bit complete. And then check the batteries are on normal. They're still running. Absolutely fine. You know about the cabin door then, the passengers will be getting into their seats for this early morning Concorde flight today into JFK. The idea being they can get there before their business meetings. So then it does all the INS stuff. Here, I personally just prefer to do it earlier, as I feel like sort of, you know, a bit more able to focus on starting the plane and I won't miss stuff. Fantastic. So, right, we can look down to carry on sort of past that. And so the clock needs to be set to the chrono position. Let's just flick that switch there. The throttle lever indices, we can just leave them as they are. You don't really need to change anything with that. We just leave these here. I, so far, haven't found that they do anything, so just leave them where they are. I'm just going to move his armrest. There we go. The briefing, right, this is our departure briefing for today. So if we go up the Avid tab, toggle the tablet here, get open our lovely, lovely Avid tab, go to EGLL. We can see here on EGAL, we've got our taxi route. Oh, hold on, I've got to get it connected, bear with me. There we go, sorry. So our departure today will be the Compton 3 Golf. It'll always be the same, even if you're off, if you're off the 27s, it'll be the Compton departures. So we're going to Compton. So our briefing then. This is where it gets a bit interesting on this aircraft, as the takeoff departure for Concorde is quite severe. So we're going to tune 113.6 onto our side. We're going to have the 256 radial from London VOR. So we can turn in the 256 onto our white one here. You dial in 256. And the idea being that we're going to fly along. Once we see that radial coming in, we're going to follow it to the DME 7, where we're then going to turn right. So set this up on your black side here to 268. Which I'm going to pull out. That'll be needed for when you do the track heading. Check out my INS tutorial if you want to learn how they really work, but that's kind of it. We're going to pull it out, follow that heading, because that's when I'll be engaging the autopilot around about there. We turn left on 256, right to that 268 towards Woodley, which we can tune up down here. That's 352. Woodley, that goes down here. 3. Oh, so I've gone around in a circle there. Hold on, don't want to tune. 1, 2, 3. Oh. We got the ADF going a bit weird. Anyway, that's not really important. We can just put up Compton next, which will be 114.35. Put that on the first officer side. Just to remind you of what we're then going to do. It'll be a right turn 281. That's just to remind me it's over there, I can see it. Climbing 6,000 then, we've got no ATC online, so my initial flight level we'll be trying to hit today is flight level 280. So I'm just going to dial that straight up on that side. Fantastic, that's 280 set. Speed of 250 knots as well, which I'll dial up on the first officer side here. 250 knots auto throttle inputted there. Now we've done that, we've got our load limits and zero fuel weights, which we've put in on the GUI. So we can open up the GUI, check the aircraft's fueled up nicely. Gross weight, we're too heavy for landing. We're below the gross weight, everything's all good there. And takeoff data we can checked. So down here, click there, and the speeds for V1, VR, and V2 set themselves automatically. At this point, we can do a test for our master warnings, if we so feel like it. The lights will go on, you get some noises, it's quite good fun. I'm just holding down that bottom button. Okay, and now if we hop into the back, our INS will have finished aligning at this point. So here they are. Green light, set them to nav. Once you get the green light, that means you can set them to the nav position. So now we set them to the nav, I'm happy to continue. We'll turn on our fuel pumps here, as it says on the checklist. All these feed pumps, that's them. Feed pumps will go on. We're going to turn on our anti-collision lights. And we'll get our clearance to start. No control online, so we don't need that. So we are all happy to start. So engine starting then. If we call over the pushback guy, I'm going to pre-plan the push on better pushback here. It's quite a tight push out of T4 stand 421. It's quite a quite a swing.
Ground to cockpit. Plan acknowledge. Call me through the menu when you're ready.
As long as he gets the idea, though, we're happy with that. So, he's driving up. As he drives up, then, Concorde hasn't got an APU. That's the first thing we're going to state here before we start doing anything. It has not got an APU, so it means starting is a little bit tricky. We have to have the GPU we had earlier. So we've gone on the aircraft page. We'll close all the catering and doors and everything and get the aircraft all shut up. But we'll keep that GPU on, as we'll need that for starting now. So if we go onto our bleed air source, that's what our GPU is providing. We can open up our cross bleeds and our engine bleed air valves across the top. Now we've got all them, we can now set our start valves for engine 3. Start valve on, you'll see the N1 starts to rise on board, or the N2 starts to rise. Head on to the overhead and turn on the fuel for that engine. And the engine will now start. It's quite a loud process. There you go, so he's telling me to set parking brake. I'm going to set my parking brake here. I didn't realise it was set. My bad. That should have been done in our safety checks. Whoop. Go on. Set the parking brake. Wonder why that's not safe. Well, that's not working for me. Bear with me, guys. Should be setting my parking brake there. Whoop. Finally then I got it going. Apologies. I hadn't set it on my keyboard. I'm so keen to fly this aircraft. I just tried to get going as soon as possible. So there we go. Parking brake's all set up there. He's now going to continue our connecting. So we've got one engine going, engine 3. So now it's up and running. We want to turn on our hydraulic valve for that one. So that's here. We click it on for 3 and you click the guard up. And we switch on the generators. Click twice. And then close our electrical SSB there. And we're going to start up the next engine. Engine number 2. Relight. Click it down to start. Not relight. Turn on the boost valve for 3. It's the air conditioning stuff on. Now we have 3 going. If we set the fuel valve on for number 2, it's now starting. So because it's now waiting for the continuous start, it's starting that. So there we go. Now we can push. So we can release our parking brake. So as long as we start at 3 on stand, engine 2 roughly on stand, just as we're starting to move, absolutely perfect for us. Get on that boost conditioning valve now. It's finished starting. It's quite a quick startup now. Get on the hydraulic valves. There's 2 for engine 2 hydraulics. Get on our generators there by double clicking, and we're all good to go. Now we start engine 4 as we're pushing back. And because we have hydraulic power, I'm going to lower the visor on the nose. Oop, there we go. I'm going to lower the visor by 1. I'm not lowering the nose here. Not lowering the nose because they were worried the nose would hit the tug, so you'd never lower the nose and push back. Just the visor, so that I can see out a bit more as I'm looking around the aircraft here. So, engine 4 then, we need to put the valve on. I'd forgot to do that, so the valve goes on. And it'll start starting then. Now we're pushing back. We can turn on the 3 switches here. The water and the shed galleys for gens 1 and 2, and 3 and 4. We haven't got 3 and 4 running, but we can turn them on before that. This is so that the galley can do their cooking and bits and bobs. Sort themselves out. There we go, we're pushing back into T4. And there, fantastic demonstration here. It started raining at Heathrow. What do you know? The fantastic rain effects are all now running. Absolutely amazing. Quite a graphics heavy aircraft, but I think it's really worth it, so I enjoy it a lot. Hydraulic valves, boost conditioning valve, generators are on there. Now that's complete. Relight engine number 1. Wait for the warning there. Turn on the fuel valve. Brilliant. Oh, and it's stopped raining. Fairly temperamental weather here at Heathrow. Parking brake set.
Disconnecting toes. Stand by.
Fantastic. So, pardon me, at this point, the aircraft's checklists deviate from what I'm going to do. As it implies, I think, sort of by these checklists, you start all the engines on stand, because it then has the before checklist after we've started all these. It then has the before pushback, but I tend to do these before taxi, and I also then going to do the before taxi checklist. So we'll finish at our engine 1. He can disconnect. Hydraulics, boost conditioning valves, generators. Same process for every engine. Now that's on, our extra SSB we closed, our water heats we turned on, our taxi lights are up here on the overhead. Taxi, extend. That's that done. Visor we set, and we're going to inform ground that we're ready to go. As you can see, that sort of works with the 4 taxi.
Hand signal on the left. We'll see you next time and have a safe flight.
And we're just going to set our vertical speed about 2,000 feet before taxi here. We'll do our before taxi checklist as they are in the right place. So, nose wheel steering, we checked. I've got my nose wheel steering set up and running here. You can see that's working quite well. Master warning panel, we've got no lights. Engine anti-ice is off. The brake fans, that's in the back, that's here. Click them on. Brake fans on. Engine idle switches, that's these two. Low. Stall warnings, we tested them earlier. Feed pumps are all on. Hydraulics are on. Electrics, we checked, they're all running. You can see they're all running nicely there. Inform ground that equipment is clear, he's told us that. The trim before flight. As we're happy with the flight controls, we've got our lights all out. We'll do a quick flight control check there. Everything's moving. Our trims, I like to have a sort of trim of about 2 down, just to keep the nose on the ground during roll. But it's a slightly different flight model with the new aircraft, so very interesting. And we can go with our taxi then. So, release our parking brake, I'll make a call on Unicom, and we're good to go. And there we are. We're just about rolling. Bit of power then, just get it moving. Just get it shifting slightly there. Unicom, Speedbird Concorde 1, taxiing out, holding point runway 27 left. Today, I thought I'd let you know on my hardware I'm using the TCA Thrustmaster Boeing yoke and the Boeing throttle too. Now, as we start to taxi, we'll lower the nose. Just normally do that just before we start taxiing. I'd not seen that properly, but there we go. We'll lower the nose. And we can see the aircraft's now starting to roll. Do a quick brake check. Bit of brake pressure. Yeah, working nicely. Allow it to start rolling off again. Absolutely fantastic. Fantastic bit of kit. Right, we'll do our taxi checklist then at this point. It's quite a short taxi out, so you want to get going with them. Bit of power, it's quite heavy today on taxi, so just trying to keep a nice, gentle, steady taxi speed. We don't want to go too quick. So, taxi, fuel transfer, so flight engineer page. Concorde needs trimming constantly to be able to maintain supersonic flight, and the flight engineer will do that for us here. So we trim for takeoff, he trims for takeoff there, the cargo weight shifts forward, so it'll now start to roll a bit easier on taxiing. That's what he's doing there. Engine rating modes, that's on the overhead panel. We've got takeoff, and the auto ignition is here. Just click this big guard up. Auto throttles, turn them all on for each engine. Just thinking we're getting close to the turn here. We're taking off 27 left, so we can just slowly turn right here before we continue on with the checks. Concorde, we're sat in the flight deck here 40 feet ahead of the nose wheel, so it looked like we were passing it, but of course you have to watch, we're quite a long way ahead of that nose wheel. So a bit of power and steer it around the corner. And you sort of overshoot quite a lot, so we haven't gone on the grass there, and actually I've undercut the corner slightly, so you can see how you've got to be quite careful when taxiing this old aircraft. It's quite interesting for taxiing. Engine masters are in the main position. Master main. Drain master heaters are on. Ooh, I'll just make this final turn, but that's that. So that drain master heaters we've got to there. Engine flight rating is in climb. I know that because it's set by default, but I'll just show you guys where that is. We'll use it slightly later as well in the flight. Just get around the corner there. Right, engine rating is set to the climb position there. We can see along the top. Pressure static heaters are on. ADS engine probe heaters are on. They're on by default, but we'll just make sure we know where they are. They're on. The engine 4 N1 limiter, we can show you where that is. That's just a little guard. That's a visual check more. It's not so much of a systems one, it's just this click there. Make sure it's showing 4. You can show 3 or 4, set 4. Yeah, the air conditioning panel down in the back here is all light screen. No warning lights, that's all good. Anti-seat system is down on the right here. No lights there. The fuel panel is good too. The reverse is shut off. We can just check we're not activating the reverses yet. We're all good. Throttles are good. Seats and harnesses are good. Tank 11. That's in the back here. That's this tank in the middle here. Check that's good. It is. And our D-air pumps for tank 6, which is here. Tanks 11. are on. It then wants to check 5A and 7A are on. They're the trim tanks. We'll need them for takeoff. I'm just going to bring us to a stop here, Concorde, just to sort ourselves out for a second. There you go. They're on. We can set these main transfer valves to auto here on the top. And we are pretty happy with all that. That is that good for today. The air pumps are on. Auto valves are set. And the flight engineer will deal with the rest of it. We just got to let him do it. Fantastic. We're all good to go. So before takeoff, our briefing for takeoff data. We're going to capture that 256. If I bring up the AVI tab again, we're going to capture the 256 radial from London, 268 across to Woodley, and then 281 up to Compton. It's quite a fast departure series here. I'll try and explain it as I'm going along. Landing lights can go on, and the turn-off lights can go on too. The transponder will set on to 2000 here, as we unfortunately hasn't got ATC online with us today. The transponder can go on there. The brake temps, no warnings. The reheat switches, haha, the fun bit here. These have, I've got it set on my hardware, as you should too. So if I show you what that it looks like. On the quadrant, this button on the side, button 4, I have, if you click here, to toggle reheat via CTY switch. Set that to do that. Really helpful. You click it, they'll put them to standby. That's what you want for takeoff, as we'll then ignite them when we go to full power, which is the best way to do it really for flights. We're going to count to 3, 2, 1 once we're on the runway and roll from there. We'll turn on our takeoff monitor there as well, and we'll do our radar down here on the left. Just click it once and it's on. Radar, we can see the aircraft coming in. I believe he's landing 27 right, so we should be fine with that. Just check my comms, seem to be slightly dodgy there. We've got unable to tune straight to 1228. Ah, there we go. That's better. Fantastic. We'll just check what he's doing. Right, we'll check what he's doing. Unicom, Heathrow traffic, Speedbird, Concorde 1, holding short runway 27 left. Are there any landing traffic? Blast our ears off if they're quite close on the radio. We'll have a quick look on the outside view. You can see a lovely bit of Concorde there. I'm using tail models scenery for today. Looks like this guy's landing 27 right, so we're good. Using tail models Heathrow today, which we haven't really explored, but it's more about Concorde today. But you can see there's the old retired Concorde, so it's nice to see new Concorde next to, of course, the old inevitable was going to happen. But we're flying it today. We're enjoying the scenery. It's pretty nice. So we'll be doing some streams here, so do come and check out my streams if you have any question. I'll be flying this bird a lot on at the moment now it's been released. So, for takeoff data, we've checked our radar's all good. We've attained our takeoff clearance in this case, so we'll just let Unicom know. Unicom, Speedbird Concorde 1, landing up runway 27 left, Heathrow. So before takeoff data, we're happy, we've checked, we're ready to go, we've done all that, and the next one is our after checklist. So this is when I don't stop really using the checklist and sort of do it via memory of how it should all be, and that's about it. So we'll line up. A lot of power again, overshooting there. Get us onto the runway, past the line, and centering it. There we go. Bags of power there, rolling us onto the bit of runway. There we go. So there we go, I'm just looking at the recording time there. It's about half an hour, 35 minutes there, from cold and dark to being on the runway. So for you, in terms of planning the flight, you can see that's why it's 3 hours. It's about 2.5 hours to do that stuff. Oh, he's going around. He's off. All right. We'll keep lining up then, centering on the runway. Trying to overget us nicely in the middle there. The lovely, lovely external model on the aircraft they've done here. Florian at Colimata's done a fantastic. Beautiful. Anyway, they're having a little discussion. We'll leave them to it. So, on the runway, our flight controls are all checked. So, here we go. So we come to a stop. We're ready to go. Starting to throttle up. As you throttle up, just click the start here on the chrono. So 3, 2, 1, now. Start confirmed. Full power. Brakes released. Try and hold center on the runway there. You can hear my rudder probably moving around a lot there. Trying to keep it central. Concorde likes to roll around, to say the least. So a bit of stick forward pressure there, just to hold it level. We're starting to increase speed more and more through 60 knots, 70, 80. It's all good. We're waiting for it. Yeah, there. 100 knots. We check our thrust is still set. It is. We're good. We're going to relinquish some of that stick pressure forward. Just a little bit now of pressure forward. 140. We're still happy. We're all good. V1. Stick neutral. It's quite a late rotation here. Rotate. Lots of pressure back on the stick. Lots of pressure back on the stick. Really lift that nose up to 10 degrees or so. Just hold it at 10 degrees. As you get positive rate, we're going to put gear up and pitch up to 15. Keep pitching up there. Keep pitching up. Pitching up to that 2,500 then. I'm holding the direction we did previously. Super Concorde 1 airborne, 27 left. And there goes 1 minute. So thrust heat off. I'm going to set ICO choir on the auto throttle just to help me out there, as it'll just sort that out for me manually. You see I've exceeded the 250 limit a little bit there, so a bit of a bumpy departure. Not quite as smooth as I should be. It's now going to hold 250 knots. Our job is to just keep the climb rate up. This is our vertical speed here. This is our pitch. This is our speed. So we're looking to keep that vertical speed up there. And then we're going to continue the initial heading. So a bit of just pitching up there. I'm using a lot of trim there, just trying to keep the nose up. That's it, positive. Quick outside view, you can see we're climbing quite slowly away from Heathrow. That's pretty standard of Concorde. We can then see our radial from that waypoint is coming in. Trim warning light there, telling me I've got lots of pitch. That's fine. So we're radial from London, sorry, is coming in, so we're just going to roll level to find that there. There we go, we've got a bit of turbulence going on there. Right. So we're now heading directly away from that Heathrow. We're hitting the 7 DME loop from London, that's coming up there. So you can see 7 DME, we're rolling right to 268. So we're now heading towards the Woodley VOR. So if I go track heading, altitude acquire, vertical speed, and turn the autopilot 1 on, it'll now sort itself out. There we go. So you can see now the aircraft flying along. I've got a trim warning there. That's just it's just telling me I'm using a bit of much trim, but that's all right. So we're now flying directly on our path. We have a look at the avatar.
2600, lining up 27 right.
We can fly towards Woodley VOR. So now we're flying towards Woodley VOR. We're no longer using the London, so we're going to tune up Compton on 11435 and set a 281 radial to that. 281 set there. Bit bumpy, swaying left and right here a bit. Guess that's just what's going on today. I'm climbing at a nice steady 2,000 feet per minute. I'm just going to turn off my taxi and turn off lights, as they're no longer showing, as the nose wheel's gone. I'm going to leave the landing lights out though. At this point in our climb, we're happy with passing through 3,000 feet. We're going to keep our climb 280, and we're looking to intercept that radial towards the Compton over there. In the back panel then, you can see tanks 5A and 7A are being drained. They're not fully drained yet, but they'll start to get emptied as we're going along. Brilliant after takeoff checklist, and climb rate is good. Landing gear up, engines checked, master warning panel. We've only got that trim warning, just telling me I'm using a bit much trim. I think. So,
Traffic,
yeah.
2600, departing runway 27 right on the Coxie 2 Fox updated.
Yeah, we've got a lot of trim up there. That's just me personally. I'm using too much trim. If you're happy pulling, I think that would probably work better with the aircraft. We're now trimmed to flight. Then flight engineer, you can trim too. Flight trim for flight mate. There we go. He's trimming for flight there. The aircraft's flying nice. If we turn our flight directors on, you don't need them for the autopilot, but it lets you know what he's trying to do. Wobbling around a bit there in the clouds, but this is now exploring Xplane 12's lovely scenery. We're still waiting to intercept that radial, so we're drifting a little bit high off the track. So we're just waiting to intercept that radial a little bit longer. There we go. It's starting to come across. You see here, when this starts to drift across further, we'll then click VOR lock and head towards it directly. At that point, we're then heading straight towards that VOR. Starting to drift in there, you can see it's getting a bit closer. We're just going to keep our nice gentle climb of 2,000 feet per minute there. We're just allowing Concorde to build speed whilst building altitude at the same time. So at IS hold 350. I'm going to turn off the takeoff monitor now as we pass through about 7,500 feet and just coming up to this turn. And they're getting a lot of stuff. I'm going to dial 300 knots there on the auto throttle systems. Oh, we got a lot of cloud flickering here. And we click VOR lock on the system there, so he now is going to turn towards Compton. The aircraft there, rolling right, there you go. And we're absolutely fantastic scenery available on Concorde. Lovely. Looks fantastic. So, rolling right then towards Compton. We 8,000 feet now, 300 knots. We're going to get high speed approval at this point. We're just passing through 9,000. With ATC online, I'd be requesting this. At this point, Concorde needs to start to accelerate a little bit faster to begin bringing the nose and stuff up. So we're trimmed to flight, that's all good. Our external lights can go off at this point as we're sort of coming up to 10,000 feet here. Coming up to 10,000, all good. The noise of then, see it comes in sort of slightly different order here. So my just personality here, just using it as a reference now, not really sticking to it much. 10,000 feet then. ICO climb 300 knots, allow the plane to accelerate up, build some speed as we zip towards our Compton radial here. And now we're about to switch to INS navigation at this point, so we can check by switching to INS here. Nothing's going to happen, this is just a visual change. You can see Malby's directly ahead, that's all fine. The ringing you're hearing in the background is the trim. We've got a trim warning here, it's not happy with the amount of trim I'm using. I believe I've got a wrong button set on my keyboard, you'll have to bear with me here. Through 11,000 though, that's fine. The speed's increasing there. We can bring up the nose. At this point, bringing up the nose, and we're selecting INS navigation. Flicking our visual displays to INS, as we're now through this point. There we go. He's now flying the INS navigation at 300 knots, so we can bring the nose up too. And the visor comes up as well. External lights are all off. And we're happy to continue. There we go. Streamlining Concorde for supersonic flight at this point now, but just above 300 knots we want to have that visor up as it keeps the aircraft really streamlined for the rest of the flight that we're going to be taking in today. Feedback Concorde 1, climbing flight level 280. So at this point we're just going to continue our climb flight level 280 at 300 knots casually, and then increasing that in increments. So I'm going to increase to 320 and 350, and we're going to finally want to be at 28,000 feet doing 384 knots. So that equates to about 0.95 at that point. When you set our QNH to 29992 or 1013 as it is, to have our standard pressure now as we're climbing up and away. So we'll set that standard pressure. And we're now on INS navigation, so we're all good in that respect. The trim warning's gone off there as we're sort of no longer using quite so much trim. It's going to be interesting on landing. You see the weather radar working at this point, we can just check out that. What I'm going to do is set it to its maximum range setting there. And now if we look down at it, you can see we've got a good display of all the weather available in front of us and all the aircraft in front of us. Climbing away then, it's sort of getting past time now. It's 8:17 local time here in the UK, so the sun's risen nicely. We're flying away there. I'm going to increase speed now to 350 knots. And click IC acquire. At this point then we're just slowly increasing at Concorde's altitude here. You can see it depends on the time of day. To adjust your vertical speed, you click in here and drag up and down, or roll up and down. It really depends on the Concorde's weight of time of day. If you're flying to Barbados, for example, you will have a lot more weight and a lot more problem than we're getting in terms of our climb rate. But 2,000 feet per minute worked out pretty nicely for us to stay in Concorde. So it's a spur of the day thing. It depends. But for today, this has worked really well. You see Xplane 12's lovely scenery out there in front of the nose. Unfortunately, can't see much inside the flight deck. That's kind of the point, to keep us nice and streamlined. We're limited out of Heathrow, unfortunately, so we're not allowed to accelerate yet until we get over the Bristol Channel, because the supersonic noise was banned over the UK, so we're not allowed to do that. Inside the flight deck then, I've completely forgotten to close the flight deck door. I saw that on the outside view. That's alright. We're back in the past, that's right. Climbing through 17,000 feet then. Very good, we're just checking there. 350 knots there. It's gone a little bit dark in the flight deck here. Of course, heading towards JFK, so we're going to be chasing the sunset almost. So This should be interesting. We might right be on the cusp of it the whole way across. So 350 knots then. We can coming up to 350 there, and we're climbing through 18,500 feet. All seems good. We've got quite low RPM. You can see 90, quite low, which means we're climbing nice and steadily. So what I'm going to do is punch up the climb rate a little bit, drag it up to about 3,500 feet. The engines, we don't want to press them too hard, but at the same time, if we've got excess power we want to use it, because Concorde has got plenty of power, and we want to get our climb rate up there so we can continue the flight as quickly as possible. We're not our most efficient here, so even if we've got low RPM, we'd be burning quite a lot of fuel, as there's quite a lot of friction there. The engine's working still quite hard at this point. There we go, climb rates have been increased nicely there. Into the back then, we can set the engine rating to normal. Oh, yep, there we go, set to normal. Was on flyover for departure, be set to normal. We did put it into flyover just before taxi, so that's all good. Our engine limiters, ground idle is on below, so I normally just put them to the normal position and high at this point as we're airborne. So the reason for those limiters is to try and stop large jet spray coming out the back of the engines on taxi and things. If there were trucks around, we don't want to knock them over, but it can limit the engines in their low idle position. It doesn't really affect much of the flight because we're sat at very high power up in the flight, so it's not really relevant, but you can see we can set them to normal there. Brilliant. Brake fans we can leave on because we might have to make a return to Heathrow if we begin our supersonic acceleration. It doesn't necessarily work. You can see they were making a lovely left turn. If we open up this iPad, the route for today's flight automatically goes into the iPad when you program it into the INS, which is quite helpful. You can check your progress there. So we're making our covering into Bristol Channel. But we like to fly manual, so I don't really look at that. But you can see on the INS panel down here, we're now of waypoint 2 to 3, which is quite nice, showing our continued progression. I wonder why we're using so much trim here. It's all fine, really. Anyway, we continue through flight level 260. We're really climbing quickly now, coming up to flight level 380. So what I'm going to do is select 384 knots on the auto throttle system there. The auto throttle system works on the principle of dial and select. So we dial what you want here. You click acquire and turn it on. The aircraft will get to whatever you want, and as demonstrated, once it reaches it, you ready? It's going to flick to IAS hold. 363, it's struggling to climb there. Anyway, here we go, it's levelling off, so we'll get a nice demonstration of it here. So the speed's increasing there, I'm looking at it, the speed's increasing, 380. There's 384, it goes to hold mode. Now it's in hold mode, I can dial this to whatever the hell I want it to be. And it won't affect the autothrottle's power out the engine. So that's worth knowing for the autothrottle system. It's a little bit interesting compared to some aircraft. I'm just going to get it. It's gone a little bit quick, so if you think it's deviating from what you want, just click IAS acquire, sorry, not ICO, IAS acquire again, just to get it to check itself. It's sort of like a double checking at this point. See, our Mach number is 0.95. We're waiting till our waypoint, supersonic point today is waypoint Setup, which is waypoint 3 on our flight plan. So we're 2 to 3 currently, so we are 47 miles away from waypoint 3. Waypoint 3 is over the Bristol Channel, which is the point at which we're allowed to go supersonic. The government have allowed us to go at that point, which is exactly, that's works for us, that's what we want. So we're waiting till that point to begin our acceleration faster and faster, almost chasing this sunset, or this sunrise even, into the distance. So 384 knots. I hope you can all see this all right. If it's too dark, we'll be streaming on Saturday, so that's all right. Our after reheats, of course, I disabled them on departure by clicking the hardware, so they're all off now, and we're all happy with that. We're just sat at 280 then, ready for our supersonic acceleration phase, which we're approaching pretty quickly. This yellow light has come on to tell us that our reheats are not activated. That's what that means. It means you haven't got the reheats on. It's a sort of safety thing, because if you had to make a sort of emergency go around or whatever, if they weren't on, you'd struggle, potentially if you're heavy, to get the power. So it's just telling us, it's a helpful little reminder, you haven't got them on. It's in our eye line, it's quite helpful. Also approaching Kenda then, we can go through some of the nav stuff. So down here we've got our distance to DME 1, which is that VOR tuned in VOR 1, which is here. This is VOR 1. This is nav 2 over here. You can see that on the left, DME 2 and DME 1 and 2. Our airspeed here, nice dial there. V1 speeds. You can dial this little bug around just to set it. I often have it set to 250. It's just a way to remind myself that's 250 knots, you know, 10,000 feet. We don't want to be above that. Altitude, radar minimums, compass bearing, and ESI. Fantastic. So, 380 knots, 31 miles. Yeah, we're closing in nicely there on that waypoint, as we are all clean and good there. So, we're at Super Concorde's one of its most efficient phases of flight. There's two in Concorde. Its first one is here, sat at 0.95 at 28,000 feet. That's its one of its most efficient points. Its other most efficient point is at Mach 2, 50,000 to 60,000 feet. So they're its two most efficient points. In between then, we're using burners and we're using lots of power. So we're not very happy climbing in between them. We're not very efficient in Concorde. Right. So, yeah, we're going to leave all the switches pretty much as they are now until this point. But ready for our supersonic acceleration then. Concorde on the autopilot, we're going to dial up. It's in hold mode at the moment, so I can dial this. I'm going to dial up 50,000 as that's our initial climb point for today. 50,000 feet, I'm going to dial up there. When we get close, I'm going to click altitude acquire, max climb mode. Now, max climb mode will climb the aircraft at the most efficient possible to maintain a good acceleration. So in other words, it's going to climb so that we can stay right, increasing our speed as fast as possible without overspeeding. That's max climb. We're going to disable the auto throttle systems and throttle up to full dry power, so that's without reheat. At which point we'll engage the reheats manually inside the flight deck in pairs. And the thrust will cut in and we'll suddenly be accelerating rapidly at that point up through the sound barrier and away. Away, out, and away, yeah. Away through supersonic speeds, and we're heading over on our rest of our route. So 16 miles then. So at 5 miles we turn off the auto throttle systems, and it's a turn at Kenda. So when you're in the turn, just watch the aircraft, make sure it's pitching all properly. Our emergency evac we're going to arm at this point, just in case we had to make an emergency return or something if the reheats didn't sort ourselves out, so we can just arm that. It doesn't cover it in the checklist. It might be worth doing it earlier on the ground, but we can just leave it as it is there for now. Fuel systems then, 5A and 7A have now been fully drained. If you have a look on the aircraft systems, 5A and 7A are the tip tanks at the two ends of the wings, and by that means they get drained quickly. They won't be filled during the rest of the flight now, but we'll leave them on for the engineer's sake in case he does decide to do something crazy. 10 miles to run then. We're getting a bit closer. The aircraft's still hovering nicely just below the speed of sound. Checking we got our TCAS on. At this point we'd be requesting further climb, but that's all good. We've got unfortunately no ATC online. It's still quite early in the morning over here in the UK. And 7.2 miles then, coming up nicely. So 50,000 feet we've dialed up previously. Auto throttle system we don't need to worry about. The nav systems, because we're on INS navigation, which means we're following the pre-programmed waypoints we put in. Don't need to worry about that. So, 28,000 feet, we're all leveled there. I'm noticing there's a lot of variation in the throttle here, so I'm not going to turn off the auto throttle systems yet, as we might start to deviate from our speed, so I'm going to do it a little bit closer. 3 miles then, so getting ready there. We're all happy, the engineer seems all good, no warning lights on any of the aircraft there, we're all fine. So, 1 mile, auto throttle systems off. There goes the turn, so we're going to go full power, altitude acquire, max climb mode. It'll try and go into vertical speed, force it into max climb. There we go. Reheats 2 and 3, cutting in. Reheats 1 and 4, white lights cutting in there. There we go, we're being forced back into our seat. We get the overspeed warning as the aircraft can't climb. The VSI shoots up and down. That's the only indication, as well as the Mach meter inside the aircraft, to tell us we are supersonic. But there we go. Mach 1.03. As John Hutchinson said, no bumps, no bangs. Concorde. We are through supersonic. We are now faster than the speed of sound. Brilliant. And then we're just checking our fuel at this point, just to make sure we're 77 tons. We got that overspeed warning, so we're trying to make sure he climbs quick enough. Basically, we accelerated so quickly with the burners here. We've gone faster than the aircraft can climb. So you see it's really pitching up, trying to get us in a rapid climb at this point, to try and counteract the effects of of what's gone on down there. So it's really climbing there, and it's pitching up to match our climb there, as our max speed is just sort of falling away slightly. Lovely. So through Mach 1.07, all seems good. 35,000 feet with the reheats all on at this point. We just want to keep an eye on our engine dials. We don't want them going too hard. I've just changed the time of day there. It was getting a little bit too dark, and so I've just sort of on just slightly so we can see. But still nice and early in the morning at this point, only 10:15. Time then, the engines are running nicely at 101. The fuel flow and the exhaust gas temperature is very high, so we're just keeping an eye on them, making sure they don't run off into the red. And our Mach meter's coming through 1.16. Supersonic acceleration's been all good. Everything seems fine. We're all happy with that. Checking back in our fuel then, the shifting is going aft as the trimming is starting to happen for the aircraft. The flight engineer trimming is, we can leave it in the trim for flight. It'll sort itself out once it's in that trim for flight setting. Just checking it was in max climb there, hadn't quite lighted up. Anyway, it's still climbing them, so we're climbing just below, or above in this case. We need to be slightly slower than our overspeed. Don't want to overstress ourselves, so he'll start to climb now to match that climb rate we're seeing. And we're just checking in the back, no warning lights. Again on the overhead, no warning lights in the aircraft. We are all happy. So we're coming up to Mach 1.3, and this is where things get a bit interesting. We're going to, the flight engineer we can't hear. I turned him off, I think.
Mach 1 passed. Fuel trim 2, flight.
There we go. He's about to say something else then, as we pass Mach 1.3. He's going to say, ramps moving confirmed. Now, Concorde has 4 Olympus engines. There you go.
Ramps moving confirmed.
So, these Olympus engines that we have on board Concorde today are a fantastic engine, produce 38,000 pounds of thrust without reheat, so they're a fantastic engine. But they can't intake air faster than Mach 1. Bit of a problem if you're going to be flying at faster than Mach 1. And they've got 18 inches of space between the front of the air intake and the start of the engine to slow the air entering from Mach 1 speeds and above down to subsonic gentle speeds. To do this, they improvise a system called ramps. We have a look on the outside view quickly, it's quite loud, but you can see these little ones highlighted here with danger. There's an inboard and an outboard ramp for each engine, and they deploy slowly. So if we have a look back on our dials here, these are our ramp dials here. See, they're deploying, starting to deploy. They'll all deploy symmetrically. They'll start to deploy more and more as we increase our speed. And they break up, and they cause shock waves of the air. They break up the air, slow it down to subsonic speed. So without that, we wouldn't be able to go supersonic. So a fantastic bit of kit there, and a bit of ingenuity that was really well designed. I was reading a book actually about Concorde, and they were saying that because the French and British were so
40,000 feet.
oh, there we go. Okay, that's fine. 40,000 feet checked. Because we were so finicky, and we used to criticise, the British and French would criticise each other's work all the time. Nothing bad could get passed through. So that's why they said every bit of Concorde is fantastically designed, because it had to be, otherwise it would get disapproved by each other. I think that's one of the things that contributed it to be so clever. Anyway, 1.5 then. The reheats are going to go off at 1.7, as we don't need them in Concorde to supercruise, to cruise really fast. We don't need that. We're one of the very few airliners that can actually do that, and very few aircraft, of course, that can actually do that. Sorry, my bad. Let me rephrase that. The only airliner that can do that, and a very few aircraft that can actually supercruise without reheat. You know, lots of fighter jets can't. So it's a pretty fantastic feature of Concorde. We could, in theory, accelerate up to supersonic speeds. He's just telling us that we're getting a bit faster, but the autopilot's on, so it'll sort itself out. So in theory, we could accelerate to this speed without reheats, but our climb rate would be certainly slow, so we don't want that really. So we use the reheats to punch through the sound barrier and get us up. We're approaching Mach 1.7, sorry, we're already through 1.6, approaching 1.7. The climb rate's still varying around as we're going through 43,000 feet. So, 1.7 there, outboards, inboards. We just click them off there. The sound gets lovely and quiet inside the flight deck here. And this sort of realisation that we're at 44,000 feet on top of the world starts to set in. You can see if I move the view just outside. Lovely scenery there. Love some clouds in Xplane 12. Everything's looking absolutely beautiful. At this point then, we're still accelerating in max climb, just with full power on the engines. We're going to be in full power now for the rest of the flight. So just make sure your hardware's all clicked into full. I know mine sometimes don't quite want to sit in full power. So just making sure that they're fully pushed up to full power. Right, now they're fully pushed up to full power, I'm happy that's stable. The plane's going to continue increasing as we continue our climb. So at 50,000 feet, we have to be Mach 2. We need to be Mach 2 for safety reasons in terms of stalling. As you go higher and faster, of course, there's less air touching the wings, less air hitting the wings. There's less density of air as you climb higher. Because of this, we have to ensure that we're fast enough, in this case Mach 2, to ensure that we're getting sufficient air over the wings and not going to stall. As a result, we have to make sure our speed continues above Mach 2 at 50,000 feet. Thank you very much for that. This is why I turned him off, you see. I might turn him off again, actually. We know what we're doing, you know, we're good pilots. We don't need the guy in the back. Oh, good then. We're just watching. We can see there the temperature on the skin here. This is the temperature down here. So static is what's actually the temperature of the air. Total is what's with the friction of the aircraft. As we go faster, loads of air particles, as I was saying, hit the skin and warm up. So currently, look, they've taken it from -60 to 0. And actually, as we go faster and higher, it should get up to about 127 or so. So it's going to get really hot on the skin. There we go, we're approaching 50,000 feet. As we do so, we're going to level off because I set it to only go to 50,000 feet initially. There we go then, it's leveling off. Leveled off at 50, it's gone into hold mode. So now we're going to dial up 60,000 feet. This is now our super cruise between 50 and 60. The speed's approaching. I'm going to select altitude acquire, max climb, max cruise. These two, max climb, max cruise. And the aircraft will now just gently climb. And this max cruise mode means that we will stay twice the speed of sound, and it will climb us just gently up between 50 and 60,000 feet there. Just enough to keep us supersonic, but without overspeeding. So we're overspeeding there, so it's going to have to back off slightly. But the idea is that it will keep us twice the speed of sound. We're through 50,000 feet, the passenger's getting restless, so the fast seatbelt signs can go off. And no smoking signs, as that will just allow them to do their thing. So, but still at full drive power, cruising nicely, and we're watching that temperature on the side start to increase. Look, it's at 7 degrees and increasing rapidly now. The skin's probably already at about 100 degrees, and it's waiting for this dial to start to increase with that. But this now becomes something we're going to have to really keep our eye on, that temperature warning. As if it exceeds 127, we could start to really seriously, permanently damage the skin of the aircraft, so we don't want that. So, to do so, we're just going to be watching it carefully here. But we're through 50,000 feet, on top of the world. Mach 2, we are faster than a rifle bullet. At this point, we're now doing about 23 miles per minute and shooting along now. You can see really how quickly we're going compared to those clouds. It's incredible speeds. We're passing through Waypoint 4, and we're on our way to Waypoint 5. We're approaching Waypoint 5 now. Waypoint 5 is Leslie, and at Waypoint 5 it is our final named waypoint before we head into the Nat tracks. Our route today is Nat tracks Sierra Whiskey, I believe. Sierra November. No, Sierra November, my bad, sorry, I'm just reading it here. And we're going to be passing through 015 west, 02 west, 03 west, 04 west, 05 west, 053 west, 06 west, 065 west, 067 west, where our Atlantic crossing stops, and we then hit waypoint Kenda, Lind, Owens and Cameron into landing. Check that again on our SimBrief pages. We can see we've got the Compton, we've passed final waypoint today, waypoint 5, before we hit the Atlantic crossing is Leslie. So then you can see we've got the DCT, these ones, which are here, a little bit confusing. You see it gets quite close. That's what you want to program in the north and westerly bit there. Same here, this bit. Ignore the ETOPS entry points. Don't put in TP1. That's not on the flight plan. SimBrief makes them up. You don't need them. Program in again this one. Ignoring ETOP entry point 2. So on. 54,000. Then we're interested in a cruise climb at this point then, between 54,000 feet and 60,000 feet. As the aircraft's just stabilising itself out at this altitude, we just continue our climb gently. On the overhead then, we're looking to turn off our heaters at this point, our pressure static heaters and ADSM probe heaters. Our drain master heaters always stay on, but these pressure static heaters and ADSM probe heaters don't need to be on if the temperature is quite high on the skin. It's only at 22 at this point, so I'm going to leave them on a little bit longer, just as the aircraft still needs them to be warm and we don't want them freezing up. But of course, 22 degrees is colder than it was on the ground, I believe, at Heathrow, so there's no need to turn them off. Our brake fans can go off then at this point, as we're cruising nicely. We're not going to be returning to Heathrow at this point, so we won't be needing the brake fans for that. Our control shuttle is normal. The hydraulics are all good there. We're seeing good, no lights on the warning here. Everything seems all fine. The cabin crew will have immediately begun their first class service on board Concorde there, and we're keeping the speed look at Mach 2.02, so we are blasting along. Nose and visor are all up, park and brake is off, we're making sure that's off. And our reheats are all selected off nicely there. Temperature's coming up to 27. I'm going to turn off our pressure static heaters, 80-inch probe heaters. It's starting to warm up there with this pressure on the skin, as the friction on the skin causing that. It's descending slightly actually, the aircraft, even in Mach cruise mode, and that's to keep us twice the speed of sound, although you don't really want to be descending, you want to only ever level off, so hopefully it'll level off there. There you go. Start to level itself off. But you do have to keep an eye on the autopilot system in Concorde. It does wander, and in this case like this, where we're really descending, it might even be worth setting your vertical speed to about 0. Oh no, it's corrected itself there. But if that had continued, we don't want to be dropping anything below 5,000, 52,000 feet, say, on our way up to 60. On these transatlantic routes, Concorde often wouldn't hit 60,000 feet. However, it was fortunate enough to on its final flight, and a couple of times during that service. I think we will today. We were fairly light, not much baggage on board. It depends on your weight, of course, as it won't be able to hit 60,000 feet at this point. When we get down to about 30 tons of fuel, so burn another 30 tons of fuel down from 67. Once we burn that much more fuel, we should then be able to hit 60. It really just depends on that and how the aircraft is weighing on the day. But I have to say, I'm incredibly impressed with Colimata. They've modelled this aircraft fantastically. So thank you very much to that for providing an amazing aircraft for us to fly. Checking the overhead then, it's all good. The Drainmaster heaters, we stay on. As I said, everything seems lovely. Seatbelt signs are off. Anti-collision lights are all on. Checking on the thing, we're heading from waypoint 5 to 6. Aha! This is where things get interesting. So, INS reprogramming. So, remember my lovely drawing of the circle of waypoints on Concorde? If you didn't, don't worry, I'm going to draw it again, so don't worry, you get to see this marvel once more. Well, a lovely circle, that's kind of a circle, with the numbers around the outside. So, these represents the waypoints in the INS. We're only able to program 9 at a time. So we're currently between waypoint 5 and 6, which means waypoints 1 to 4, these ones here, aren't being used at all, are they? They're not being used because, well, they're previous waypoints we've already passed through. We're not using them. But remember I said this circle of waypoints, it goes round. So from 9 to 1, we need to head across. But of course, if waypoint 1 is still Compton, we're going to be going back on ourselves. So we want to reprogram that as waypoint 10. But then we're actually continuing through, and we're pretending that this is 10, this is 11, and this is 12, and you see, etc. And we're going to head on through round in a circle. So if I don't save that, no, we don't save that. So if I head down to my INS here, you can see on the numbers here we're heading from waypoint 5 to 6. So if we select waypoint 1, we're going to reprogram that as waypoint 10, which today is north 4703. It's just a transatlantic waypoint, so it doesn't have a name, but it's west. It's 05 west. And we just click insert there. Waypoint 2 is waypoint 11. So it's 4610 north. And it's 053 west. We just insert that. You see the light not quite coming on there. That's just the lighting we're currently in. It's quite bright outside now with the time's marched on a little bit quickly now, but we're going to sit at around the sort of daylights we're at now. We go faster than the sunset in Concorde, so because of that, we're going to be time warping almost back in time, as it were. That's why I accelerated the time on a little bit, because I realised we're going to be flying in the dark. I departed a little bit earlier than Concorde would in reality. 4246 then, I'm just programming 65 west as well there. So 6500 west goes in there. Now we don't want to program waypoint 5 because we're using that. Concorde draws a line between the previous waypoint and the next waypoint to navigate between. If you reprogram the next waypoint as something else, it would come out looking very weird. So if we imagine we have waypoint 5 here on a straight line to waypoint 6 and the aircraft's here, if we reprogrammed waypoint 5 as our next waypoint, say, and it spawns suddenly over here as our next waypoint, and we reprogram that, the new line Concorde will draw is this line. And so funny, with the aircraft here, it's going to suddenly point over that direction to try and change it, and then it'll turn like that and you'll get all sorts of problems. So do not reprogram waypoint 5 until you have passed it. Hello, welcome back. I've just taken a quick break there, but I thought I'd take time here whilst we're sort of between 50,000 and 60,000 feet cruise, and we're just enjoying a nice sort of gentle dather along at between waypoint 7 and 8. I thought we'd take time to explore the really unique features of Colimata Concorde. And, no way is paid promotion, this is just me showing my views on this aircraft and why I think it's so fantastic. And if you're looking to buy this aircraft, this might be a little bit helpful for you guys, just to make up your mind. So firstly there, just in this little bit of camera movement, just look at the dials, the reflection and detail we've got going along as we move across here. Fantastic. Shadows, of course, that's Xplane 12. I've got mine a little bit lower. If you want them higher, you probably could. You see a bit jagged there. But absolutely fantastic. The wear and tear on this aircraft is something to behold. I mean, if you look on this dial, see the markings on here showing the level of detail in the flight deck. All through the flight so far, we've demonstrated all the features of Concorde and how fantastic it is looking out that view. But we really not really appreciated how fantastic the whole aircraft is, really. You know, they've gone to the detail to have this gap that opens up. I'll show you it later on. You'll see there's a gap there now. There won't be one later on. That's because Concorde's fuselage really did expand in real life with the temperatures of the skin. In fact, the cabin was mounted on rollers to allow it to stay the same shape. And the fuselage would actually stretch due to the unique temperatures of the flight. So it really is amazing that they've modelled that in Xplane 12. We shoot back into the rear here then. We're exploring the same cabin. It's pretty similar to the Xplane 12. So Xplane 11 version, even in Xplane 12. We've got our lovely first class layout here. They've done it always really well, I think, with the screens working nicely there, demonstrating the temperature, speed, and altitude to the passengers, just like it does in the real aircraft. Looking out the window then, of course, we see the Xplane 12 graphics, really small windows, just like in Concorde. It's fantastic. They've really done the lighting is very nice. They've fixed the gaps that were in Xplane 12, so they're really fantastic features. And then I think this is a very touching momentum that they put on the seat here. I'll let you guys read it. It's not worth me reading it out, but I think it's a lovely memento, I think, and I think it's this kind of attention to detail that really stands the Colimata Concorde out from the rest of the Concorde aircraft. Their level of care and detail that goes into this is fantastic. Shooting back to the rear cabin, then we can see we go through this lovely little toilets and things, which you can actually go in. Inside here, you can close the door and flush the toilet. It's quite a loud process, so close your ears. There you go, it's flushing. Here comes the noise as it goes out. Hear the rush. Then we can open the door again. Go back into the rest of the cabin. Really nice then, I'm really impressed. You know, the lighting quality in this is fantastic. The seat and the texture quality is amazing. And it's good that they've actually gone to the detail to put a cabin in, as it can be easier not to, so I like that. It's a good bit of detail there. Yeah, so that's a little tour of the little cabin then that we've got behind us here. I really like it in general. I think it's a really nice little thing. We shoot back up to the front. We'll have a little explore of the cabins, and then we'll have a little look at the outside model. Again, seeing the screens that are duplicated back here at the rear for the passengers to continue viewing speed and everything, regardless of where they are. Full first class service in Concorde, of course. Everything is first class. Really lovely. Lighting model. Amazing. Back to the front then. Close the door. And if we head back into the front then, in the front of the aircraft, we are all good again. 57,000. Heading between 7 and 8. Nothing we need to do. Up outside then, we can explore the external model of this aircraft. They've done really, really well in my opinion. I think it looks really accurate in detail, and I'm interested to know because of course we're using a V2 livery, but apparently they're fully compatible, and they are because we're working well. But the texturing is quite impressive then. I think it's very similar to V2, but the externals of Xplane 12 make it look a little bit nicer, maybe. So it's good. It's really good. I mean, you know, you can get, I've seen slightly higher ones, but then this is absolutely amazing at the same time. So I don't really know how much higher you'd want in a way. It's fantastically good looking plane, and I think they've really captured it well in Xplane, our little simulator. So it looks really good there. Good quality, all texturing on the outside of the aircraft. I think it's fantastic. If you're a current V2 customer looking to upgrade to V3, it's a no-brainer really. $11 shoot up there. It's fantastic. There's a couple of bugs, as this is the first day actually. It was released last night, so it's brand new aircraft. I'm noticing quite a lot of wobbling as we're in cruise here. The plane's really rocking left and right. I don't know how that is. A little bit sort of nauseating almost. It's not too bad. It's just a little bit unsettling, but that's all right. I think it's just one of those things. But you know, in terms of bugs, we've really not encountered any. It's a really amazing aircraft. I'm very impressed. And for a brand new thing to not have any bugs at all, it's really good. I would even go as far as to say this is probably the most detailed aircraft in Xplane 12. There's the electronic aircraft like the 767 and the Hot Start Challenger, but you know, to have a Concorde modelled in such high fidelity and depth, I think is a fantastic push. I definitely give this Pillow Pilot star of approval, and I would even push it so far as to say it might even become more almost study level. The amount of detail and the amount of switches you have to flick in this aircraft to get started up is really quite something. And if you don't do them in the correct order, you will find it difficult to take off. So I think it's really incredible what they've done, the team over at Colimata. And I love it. I think it's fantastic. Little rant over. Hello, so we're approaching the end of our flight plan, as it were. We're coming to waypoint 9. Now, we still have a lot of waypoints to go, of course. We still have 10, 11, 12, through to 18. So, as I was describing earlier with our circle of waypoints, we've got to maintain our circle of waypoints here and carry on with our flight plan. So, this is a quick part here. I'm just going to show you how to do that. I'm in the background here. I'm just selecting vertical speed on here. The aircraft start to really descend sharply there. And it's a bit of an interesting flight here at 60,000 feet, or at 54,000 feet in a way. So, down to our INS systems then. We've programmed in all our waypoints 7. Up to 7 we've reprogrammed. So we've reprogrammed everything as we've been doing on the flight through. We've got 19 miles to run here. So, we're just waiting to pass through waypoint 9, because once we pass through waypoint 9, the aircraft won't automatically select going back to waypoint 1. So we're going to have to do that ourselves here. It's a pretty simple process. That's why this is only a short little part of the tutorial here, as we are just looking here to get round onto waypoint 10. So make sure we programmed up all our waypoints. We did that earlier, so we're all good to go. See our distance time here, so we can tick down here. We can see we're coming up to 9 miles. All we're going to do then here is we're going to click waypoint change 9-1, insert waypoint change. I like to think of it as if I'm saying it, so I'm saying, okay, so I'm going to change the waypoint then on the flight plan computer from 9 to 1, as I type it in there. I'm going to insert that, and I'm going to insert my waypoint change. And it's as simple as that. I clicked waypoint change, 9 to 1, insert waypoint change. And from now on, the aircraft will do it all itself. It'll run completely through all the way the rest of our flight plan, ticking through from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, so on. You see the aircraft there now heading towards waypoint 9. Or waypoint 1, sorry, which is actually waypoint 10. Fantastic. So we can quickly then continue on with our reprogramming. Waypoint 8, just check which waypoint. So waypoint 7 was 3942246. Waypoint 8 is Owens, which is north 39494, west 072498. Insert there. Fantastic. And then we have one more to go, which is after that, which is waypoint 9, which we'll have to reprogram again, which is Cameron. After that, we'll be flying the aircraft on headings into the runway, as we're very close to the airport at that point. Because if we have a look at our sim brief point here, we can see our final waypoint, waypoint Cameron. We're then going to turn north, as this then from Cameron depends on which approach we're flying as to which heading we'll take and where we'll go from there. But you can see our rough route as we take ourselves down across the Atlantic. Fantastic. In the aircraft then, I'm still just checking the temperatures. We've got 126 degrees on the skin here. We don't really want to be exceeding that. So we're just in that steady cruise climb, looking to keep going up to 60,000 feet with the temperature just as it is. The probe heaters are off and the seatbelt signs are all off too. Hello again. We're just hitting 60,000 feet now. I was amazed. Suddenly rushed back when I realised this was happening. But there we go. We're just, bam, 60,000 feet there. So, a couple of bits and bobs we've got to do now. Aircraft goes into altitude hold mode automatically, which is great. We now have to go to Mach hold mode on the auto throttle, because of course if we stayed at full throttle we'd overspeed the aircraft. So it'll go into Mach hold now, and it'll try and hold Mach 2.02 where we engaged it. On the overhead panel, we're going to put the flight rating to climb and flight. Our heaters are off, our seatbelt signs are off. The aircraft is levelling out. Quite a bumpy. The aircraft really moving around a lot. I don't quite know why. That's a Colimata V3 thing, I think. Probably some sort of slight bow, I think, potentially. If you can put up with it, it's absolutely fine. I found the aircraft is handling perfectly normally in every other aspect, and so actually we're still completely completing our rest of our flight. Fine. Into the back then, tanks 5A and 7A are all drained. 11 is and 9 are still going. We've got the D-air pumps on to keep them emptying, to keep the D-air out of them. And at 60,000 feet, we've just got to check if everything's all running smoothly. Seems like it is. No bumps, no bangs. We're all fine. The aircraft's running very nicely. Unfortunately, no ATCs come online yet. Oh, I am mistaken. Dun dun dun. I believe Shanwick Radio's come online. Yep. Shanwick and Gander, he's online. Wonder if he will speak to us. We'll have to wait for a quick ping. I'll expect one any minute now. But at 60,000 feet then we make sure our altimeter's all neutral so that we are actually at 60,000 feet. The Mach hold is overspeeding us a little bit, so what I'm going to do, if you find that you're getting up to 2.04 for example, your temperature's getting a bit high, I'm going to disengage the auto throttle, throttle back manually, allow it to drop quite steeply, and I'm going to re-engage it at lower than Mach 2.02, because it looks like the Mach hold goes a little bit over what it says on the dial. So what I'm going to do is allow it to drop, now engage Mach hold, and it should hold us at 2.02 now. The Concorde cruises at 2.02, that is the max speed for cruising, and that is how it will work. So that's how the plane flies at Mach 2.02. So make sure you're cruising at 2.02. So there we go. Water throttle system's there. I think it's starting to hold us out at a nice plane. Hello. We are just approaching 100 miles. We just passed through 100 miles from Kenda, which is our descent point. At 60 miles, we'll begin our descent. So we're going to do some descent preparation into Kennedy. The winds down in Kennedy today are a steady 1203 knots, which means looking at our Avi tab here, we can see we'll be taking runway 13 left, which means we get to do the fantastic Parkway visual runway of 13 left. We're unable to do the RNAV, of course. We're only a VOR capable aircraft or INS navigation, so we're not able to do the RNAV. So it's going to have to be the Parkway visual, which means we've got to program up some prior waypoints. So we're going to program at Kanazi on 112.3. We're going to, you can see we're going to pass through Kanazi at this point. We're going to, on that heading, continue into 13 left along the sort of shoreline of that motorway. So with the motorway on our right. Going through Kanazi then will be nice at about, what does it say? Maintain 2000 till Rockway Point to remain west of Rockway Point. Crossbrooks in Coast Guard Station remain until Kanazi Pier 1500. So, where's that? There's Kanazi Pier, so it wants us to remain at or above 1500 until Kanazi Pier. Okay. Runway 13 left, continue descent after passing twin stacks. Twin stacks, okay, we're looking for them. There they are, twin stacks. We continue our descent after we pass from them. Continue descent. So it's going to be a very, very visual approach into 13 left. It's going to be quite good fun. That's about that. Right, descent then. We need to get our seatbelt signs on. The passengers. We need to put the engine rating back into climb mode for the descent. And we need to just check our fuel page, check we're all good, and we will switch on the brake fans for arrival. So we'll prime up our initial descent then, at about 30,000 feet. Initially, 30,000 feet. What we're going to do, we're going to throttle back to about 90%. So that means this little arrow here, ignore that collar. This arrow here is where we're going to put the throttle. So if we do that now, water throttle off. We're going to throttle back to there. At which point I'm going to go altitude acquire vertical speed, lower the vertical speed to about 2,000 feet per minute, and we're looking to, if I set it up here, we're looking to descend for about 350 knots on the way down for Concorde. We have to keep that power on as it keeps us out of the stall region in the aircraft's flight. The idea being that if you keep the power there, the aircraft can descend nicely whilst still maintaining good flight. So we've got the seatbelt signs on then ahead of our landing. Everything's running nicely. We're just now beginning our descent. So in the descent then we're just looking to keep varying that vertical speed just to keep us around 400 and also to keep us around 350 knots, so our speed's dropping back quite nicely there, so we can just keep our descent about that. If we head on to the Avi tab, we can tune up Kennedy, which I've got to remember what it is. Let me have a look, see, got to remember what it is here. Best way to do it is probably to get up the departure and have a little look. 1159, there we go. If we tune up 1159, we can come back to the Kanazi one in a minute. If we tune up 115.9 on the flight deck side, you can see we've got 182 miles to run until Kennedy. So we really don't need to worry about descending too quickly. If I put Kanazi on the other side, then I'll remember. So I'll put it on that side. It's going to be an incredibly visual approach here. What I often like to do with the Parkway visual is combine it with the VOR, runway 13 left, in a way. So if we go VOR 13 left, that's right, you get an idea for what we're aiming to do with this visual. So it's going to be a 041 heading, which if we head onto the visual, you see R041. So if we want to dial 041 on our sort of course, on the course of the VOR, we can. Although it looks like we've got a 223 reciprocal heading coming into it. It's going to be 043 going in and left 041. So what's that, 043? I sort of use them in tandem together just to get an idea for the navigation. I think it's a bit clearer on this one. But for the Parkway visual then, we're going to be looking to go over the Brooklyn airfield here on the right. And then we want to stay just on the edge of Jamaica Bay, checking ourselves around. We'll see the pier on our left here. It's quite clear in Xplane 12 actually, which is quite nice. And then we're going to be splitting left onto 13 left, not 13 right. It's a very tight turn. We won't be able to make that, so we'll go to 13 left. Round. Unfortunately, I've got default scenery for Kennedy. I haven't found any scenery that's been released for it yet in Xplane 12, so we're going to be using the default scenery that just comes with the sim. So it should be interesting to see what that looks like. During the turns here, we have to watch Concorde. It can get a little bit dicey, as it were, going around the corners here. So we just have to make sure we're being careful when we go around. It's still going to keep sending. The aircraft can get out of control if it's in a turn and pushing, as it often sometimes won't turn, or if it's climbing it might stall. So just being careful as we go around the corner there. At this point it'd be tempting to go onto the flight engineer page and trim for descent. However, I'd hang fire for a minute. Trimming for descent, I think, moves the cargo position backwards, and we're currently trimmed for flight. We've got a good nose down. We're trying to burn as little fuel as possible at this point, of course, but we're still going to keep the engine rating the same. But we're flying along nicely. The aircraft seems well trimmed. There's no need to trim for descent initially, as it often can mess up the aircraft and make it quite unstable for the last couple of seconds. So it's not worth doing that at this point. And so we're happy to leave it as it is for now. Brilliant. Speed dropping back then, look into the 90s, 390s. Just going to increase our descent rate a little bit there. There we go, we're heading from waypoint 6 to 7 along our final little course correction here. Waypoint 8 is programmed up. We just got to program waypoint 9, which we can do here. This is Cameron, which is north 4001.0, and it's west 07351.7. That's Cameron waypoint programmed in. So we now have all our waypoints set up finally for the aircraft's descent. Local time in Kennedy here is about 7 AM in the morning, so it's quite early. So we might get a bit of sunset or whatever in the morning. But it shows off the aircraft's looks again, so very happy to do that. Right, we're going to try and remain in the flight deck now, and as we continue our descent, we can continue to have a look at our approach. We need to set up our minimums, which for this, we've got a weather minimum ceiling of 2,500, so if the weather is below that, we're unable to fly this. So we're just going to set that. So if we set the minimums here by dialing this on this dial here to 2,500 feet, do it on his side too. When we pass through 2,500, we'll know whether or not we're happy to continue with the approach. Brilliant. I'm going to dial in an initial heading of 350, because from Cameron it sets us up. If we have a look at SimBrief, we can see Cameron sets us up facing, if we zoom in a bit, facing sort of westish, and we want to head north, of course, up to Jamaica Bay. So if we set 350 initially, that'll take us across Middletown, and we can then join in the approach from there. So that works for us. Cool. Right, we're continuing our descent through. Aircraft's a little bit wobbly here. We've still got 140 miles to go, so plenty of distance. No need to rush the descent here, so we'll just back it up slightly. Once we're below 40,000 feet, we can start to adjust the throttle to control the speed on the descent as we want to. But above that, I would not recommend removing it from the point we set it to descent, as you'll find the aircraft becomes unstable at that point. So you're going to keep it where it is. And we're just looking to allow the speed to keep backing up to 350. Got a lot of turbulence going on here in the aircraft. Really bumping around. Obviously dropping back down out of 60,000 feet, where it's nice and smooth into a more turbulent area around the Kennedy area. 3 miles an hour of wind then. The temperature is 48 degrees Fahrenheit here, and the pressure is 3010. We've got some broken clouds at 4,600 feet and an overcast at 10,000. I've been told there's also some mist, and in the NOTAMs we've got a report of occasional showers to the south of the airfield, so we might pass through some showers here as we make our way into the Kennedy. Of course, going through the side here, in these clouds we might hit some rain, so that's quite good. I'd like to see some of the more rain effects on the Colimata Concorde. It's one of the new things in Xplane 12 which wasn't compatible in Xplane 11, so I'd like to do that. Lovely then. So what I'm going to do is actually set up, let's switch the waypoints. So I'm going to put Kennedy over onto his side, and I'm going to put, we have Canardi on our side. 112.3. The Kennedy VOR is much more powerful than the Canarsie VOR, so that's why if we look down here at DME 2, we'll see we can still pick it up even at this distance, whereas Canarsie on DME 1 we can't pick up. $123 miles to run. Just going to reduce my descent rate slightly here. There we go, we're turning right now towards Owens. So yeah, here we go, there we go, through the waypoint, heading towards Owens now. And from here we're going to continue on to Cameron. We're going to have a big right hand sort of turn once we pass through Owens on our way to Cameron. And then from there we're going to head on a 350 heading just to make us northish towards, try and put us onto the approach. Aircraft starting to run a bit low on fuel, down to 14 tons of fuel left on board the aircraft as we start to get a bit lighter and towards. You can see we're catching up to 350 knots here, so as we approach it we're just going to allow the autopilot to put on the auto throttle and reduce or increase the throttle depending on what it needs to do, as we're now down at 33,000 feet. I'm going to continue dialing the altitude to continue the descent down to 15,000 feet. Our next sort of interchangeary one. To do that, I'm going to re-click altitude acquire vertical speed there. There we go, we've just become subsonic. The aircraft in Colimata has a flight model change at this point, so you might notice the aircraft jump around a bit, allow it to sort itself out again, and then you can continue your descent. But now we're slipping down into the realms of flying Concorde, into a subsonic state where we're just like any other aircraft approaching Kennedy. We've got 107 miles to run, so I just want to reduce our descent rate a little bit and just try and hold speed around where we are now. We're going quite quick at this altitude, and I'd like to sort of try and remain where we are. The descent into Kennedy always seems a little bit early, and you'll find yourself trying to cling on to altitude, but then it can often get to the point where you get quite close and you're still quite high. So we were trying to keep a good descent rate up here, but also aware of the fact that we're now with subsonic, things take a lot longer to happen. And it'll be a while until we reach Kennedy at this altitude. Unfortunately, no controllers online, but we'll make our call on Unicom to let them know what we're doing. Unicom, Speedbird Concorde 1, descending through flight level 310, flight level 150 for the Parkway visual into runway 13 left, Kennedy, heading towards Cameron. Here we need to amend our call sign to Speedbird Concorde 1 Heavy. Often it's just polite to say Speedbird 1 Heavy, but if you're with a controller, often say Speedbird Concorde 1 Heavy to make it clear on the first contact who you are and what aircraft you're flying, because of course now Vatsim, where now Concorde's of course been phased out, the Speedbird 1 could also be this A318, which British Airways operate, so that's quite a different flight model to Concorde, so it's worth saying Speedbird Concorde 1 on your first contact. He makes that mental note that you are who you are, because the Concorde's quite quick, and so for a controller, stacking and spacing it in a slot is always quite difficult, and so if we make it a little bit easier for them, just let them know who we are straight away, they don't have to go searching through on their charts to find us. It makes things a bit easier. Down to 13 tons of fuel then. We've got a fuel warning low light, which we get at 15 tons. At 10 tons we'll get a call telling us we need to land. As 10 tons below that, we only have the opportunity to make one go around. So the Kennedy winds look nice and light here, so we're all right. But as you can tell, Concorde really scraped over to Kennedy here. We didn't load up with that much fuel. I took it down a little bit as fuel prices, quite high. I wanted to be efficient. But if you're ever in doubt, do take more fuel than you need, as we're being proven here. But it's perfectly normal, of course, in the descent. See, we're burning very little fuel, which is fantastic. Concorde's very efficient in this descent phase, so we don't need to worry about that. Brilliant. Now we're starting to approach. We got our brake pads on still. We're going to set the engine limiters to the low position and the 88% limiter. Or sorry, leave it on the normal for the engine 4 limiter, and set engine 1 and 4 and 2 and 3 to the low position, the ground idle. The engine control schedule can go to the approach setting as we start to begin. And then we're looking into our main aircraft. We can see tank 11 is empty, so we can shut off the de-air pump in there. This tank 10 and tank 9 are both empty, so the de-air pump can go off in the top two. And then our 5A and 7A can be shut off as we're happy they have been emptied. We don't need them for landing. We don't want the engineer trimming any fuel into there, so we're happy to shut them off. 17 miles to the waypoint. Owens. From there we'll be heading to Cameron. Through 270, then we've got 78 miles to run till Kennedy. So we're just trying to match our descent rate with that of the distance from the airport. On the overhead then we're checking we've got our seatbelt signs on, our emergency evacuation is armed, our anti-collision lights and nav lights are all on, and our pressure static heaters, now we're coming back down into the cold realms of flying Concorde. We're still at 85 degrees, but as we start to cool down and slow down now, especially if subsonic, it starts to get cold flying Concorde, and we have to turn the heaters back on for the aircraft, because at this point we need them to keep the aircraft systems warm, and the temperature provided by the speed is no longer there. Just checking my radios at this point, having a look, making sure I've still got Unicom primed up, and there's no controllers. I'm checking over on Vatsim, no one online, so no need to do anything there. $13 tons, we can see the cargo weight starting to move forward, the position of centre of gravity starting to move forward. Sorry, pardon me, I keep saying cargo weight, I mean centre of gravity. As centre of gravity starts to move forward, we know that's because we're starting to slow down. We need pressure on the nose to keep it down. Below 10,000 feet, I trim for landing. I'm still trim for flight at this point, not for descent. However, as we're starting to get low, you could trim for descent, but I often find it's easier to skip trimming for descent, because of course we didn't do it on the climb out. We only trimmed for takeoff and then flight. Trimming for flight, it will do the same thing as it did on the takeoff, and trimming for landing and takeoff are the same thing. They put the centre of gravity as far forward as it can possibly be, as it's the best place to have it for landing, especially with Concorde's delta wing shape. We need as much weight forward as possible. We only have 13 tons of fuel on board, so moving around that CG is not too hard, so it won't take the aircraft very long to move it around. Having said that, 13 tons of fuel can make quite a big difference to the way the aircraft flies, so really for us it's about trying to get it trimmed to the right point. So for me, I'm happy to stay in flight at this point. Trimming for descent would only mean we have to throttle up more and burn more fuel, whereas trimming for flight keeps CG fairly far forward. Trimming for descent actually moves it back so that you can, the idea is you can descend quickly with a low RPM, but because we're quite far out, I want to descend at a low descent rate with a fairly low RPM. So the idea is there that it's better to trim for flight, so it keeps it forwards, and we can keep a fairly flat nose angle. Descending into the lovely fluffy clouds then on Xplane 12 rather. Quite impressive, these clouds. I'm really impressed with the way the plane interacts with them actually. So very nice. I'm checking the weather again into Kennedy on this METAR site here. It looks pretty good. The winds are still 130.3, which is nice. So we'll be using a 1-3 left, which is always a good fun place to land after the long flight that we've been doing today. In Concorde especially, because everything comes a little bit faster, we're doing about 200 knots on the approach rather than the typical sort of airliner speed of about 140. We're doing about 200 down to 180. Everything comes a little bit faster, which means making the turn into the parkway visual. It's quite a fun procedure, so I'm looking forward to doing that. Nothing to do here, we're just monitoring the systems on the engines, making sure we're not using too much fuel. We can see we're using 25 per hour, which is all not too bad actually that's quite low for Concorde. So we can see that 12 tons of fuel. We start descending with 16 tons of fuel, so we've used 4 in our descent, I believe, which is quite impressive. It's quite a low fuel burn. So if you start your descent and you think you're a bit low, hang on, I think you'll probably be alright. You can see there the radar not picking up any weather, but starting to pick up a couple of aircraft. We've got a couple of airports and things as well coming into view. There's different modes on the radar. There's off, weather radar, and test. Test gives you airports as well as aircraft, which is, I always find, is a little bit more. It's quite a basic radar, so it won't give you too much anyway. So having it on the test mode for me works better. If you want to just see a more clear and clean view, then go on the weather radar setting and you'll just get aircraft and weather. 25 miles from Cameron then. We're continuing our descent and getting ready to make that turn, heading 350 north. So the autopilot system, a quick thing. If you want to track heading and fly a heading such as you're given by ATC, click the track heading and pull this dial out and it applies that heading. If you want to fly a radial into a VOR, push it in and click track heading and you'll fly that radial in. But I always recommend just going for VOR lock if you're flying towards one, such as that. Through 21,000 feet then we're continuing our descent down to 15,000 initially. We've got 45 miles to run. We've got the Cameron VOR coming up as well. Down at Cameron we need to be 2,500 feet, or sorry 2,000 feet, and then 1,500 immediately after. From there it's about visually taking it into the runway with a nice gentle glide slope. Due to Cameron's nature, also Canarsi's nature, we're going to be descending, putting the gear down, sorry, just as we pass over Canarsi, and lowering the nose fully so that for the turn we're fully configured for landing, so we can focus on really flying it in there at that point. The auto thrust systems automatically disable at 200 feet. Because of this, you want to make sure you've taken manual by that point, otherwise whatever your hardware is set at, which is often full power, because of course we've been set at full power previously, it'll suddenly jump to, so make sure you're disengaging it slightly earlier. I'll be disengaging mine at about 500 feet. Continuing through 20,000 feet then, we're coming up to 13 miles to Cameron. All seems good. We're checking in the back again here. We're just checking we've got the ground idle low, the brake fans are on, and the engine control judge all set to approach. All's working nicely. Have a quick look on the map here, we can see where we are. Just give us an idea for our approach. You can see we're just coming along to the coast here, about to touch Cameron here. I'm going to deviate now. I'm going to turn the track heading on 350 just a bit earlier than Cameron, because heading of 350 should bring us perfectly from where we are just onto the Cameron approach. Turn right heading 350. We've got 38 miles to run then to Cameron. At Cameron, of course, we need to be level 2000, so if we dial up 2000 into our autopilot panel on the right, reacquire it there, and I'm just going to increase my descent rate slightly at this point, just to make sure we're getting onto it. I'm going to switch to rad now. We're off the INS systems. Aircraft there lumbering around the corner. And we're going to hold 350 knots until we get to 10,000, where we are obliged to slow to 250. Sorry, click that in rad. So you can see here, a heading of 350 is taking us across on the VOR lock for Cameron, which is fantastic and perfect, because by the time we start to get a little bit closer, that'll come in and we'll be able to capture it perfectly. So this is nice. Aircraft functioning very well at this point as well. We're checking we've got our heaters on, anti-collision lights are still all on, and the aircraft is all pretty much configured for landing at this point. We've just got to sort out our nose, and then we'll be all done. 29.5 miles to run until Cameron. You can see we're coming along long branch here and just making our way right up across New York Bay at this point. We'll then head across into Jamaica Bay for the main approach. If I switch over to the charts now, we can see the Canarsie approach here. You can see the red aircraft symbol. If you have Avitab, I recommend it. You can see we're coming in nicely. It's a good way, especially in an analog aircraft like Concorde, where we don't have a map or a nice navigation feature in the aircraft. Really helpful to use this. If you don't have Navigraph, there is of course this iPad. I just find it a little bit more clunky to use than Avitab, which I find very very sleek and efficient. There we are then. We're coming right across now. We're going to increase our descent rate as we're getting close, and I'm going to start slow. So we're going to slow up to 300 knots, just because we're a little bit high still at this point. So if we slow to 300 knots and increase the descent rate, it also gives me the opportunity to demonstrate to you a nice feature of Concorde, the reverse caps. If I click in there, you'll see the reversers on the inner two engines have deployed. These are not the full reversers, they're only the secondary reverse nozzles. The little flaps on the end of the engine deploy and cover the end of the engine. You can see quite clearly there on the two inboard engines. This helps to really slow up the air flowing through the engine and allows us to really slow whilst not damaging the engines at this point. I'm going to continue that slow to 250 knots. We've got 18 miles to Cameron. We're a little bit high, so I'm just going to increase our descent rate down there. Concorde, very effective. It can descend very quickly if need be. Coming through 13,000, then the flight engineer can now trim us for landing. Check we're trimmed for landing. We are. The nose has come nicely forwards there, and the cargo weight's really been, the centre of gravity, sorry, has been shifted forward. We're descending good. Our speed's just increasing there slightly, so we've got those reverse caps out trying to slow us down here. If need be for this approach, you might have to make an extra circle, which I might have to do here, as I've allowed us to stay a little bit high. I'm going to turn on our taxi and landing lights. We won't need the taxi turns lights here at Kennedy. It's quite a bright day today. There we go, we've got some rain there. So there's someone else making their way in. We'll just check our charts, see how we're going. See, we're coming up here, approaching the bay. Now we've trimmed for landing. If we click in the speed, you can see we get our landing speeds. We've got our VREF and touchdown speeds. So we're going to try and continue slowing up then to 220 knots and 200 after that. We're descending very quickly at this point here, and we've got the reverse caps out to keep trying to slow us down. However, we are just still a little bit high. We're still high, so I'm going to make one right-hand 360-degree circle. Concorde's quite a difficult aircraft to descend, and so you might often get it that you find you're not quite at the right altitude at the right time. I'm going to reduce our descent rate to 2,000 feet per minute, allow the speed to start backing off, and just make a quick right-hand circle to allow the speed to bleed and allow the aircraft to slow. I'm going to continue the right turn 120. You can see we've just passed through the lock for Canarsie, so if we continue that right turn, we'll do a quick 360 circle and make our way back in just to lose some altitude here. With the reverse cap still out there, and I'm allowing the speed to drop off. You can see the engine idle speed here is about 67 N2. It's quite high in Concorde, which is one of the reasons why it can produce so much thrust, but also because, it does on the con side mean that we don't lose speed quite as effectively as we normally would in a subsonic airliner. Slowing through 300, then I'm going to lower the visor, as we should have it down by low 10,000 feet, but we get the speed up a little bit there. There goes the visor then, the speed really dropping back there fantastically. Nose starts to pitch up. I'm going to bring in the reverse caps at this point. We don't need them quite for the descent so much. Continue the right turn heading south again. You can see there's the airport off to our right, off to our left, sorry there. We're making one quick circle to lose some altitude. Kennedy traffic, Speedbird Concorde 1, making one right-hand 360-degree circle to lose speed before entering the Parkway visual runway 13 left. We'll continue our turn 240. We're currently over Jamaica Bay at this point. And in our little circle here, we're going to keep losing some altitude and speed. So we're down to 220 knots there. The autopilot's now holding 220. We'll allow it to start to hold 210 below that. When you're in a turn in Concorde, you want to really watch your speed, as it can often wander around, and you don't want to run the risk of entering a stall. Hence why I'd like to slow down to 200 knots. However, I'm reluctant to whilst we're in this tight turning that we're doing here. There comes the light showers of rain we were expecting to have around where we are. And we're levelling off there at 2,000 feet. We're going to continue our descent 1,500 feet now. And make our turn direct to Canarsie. Aircraft handling quite sluggishly now at this speed. We're going to continue slowing 200 knots. With 7 miles to run till Kennedy, we're going to lower the gear and drop the nose fully. Full nose always comes after the gear, as you start to get a bit of pitch with the gear. Continue right then, starting to really lock on to... Locking onto the Canarsie VOR here. We're heading over the old airfield off to our right. We're going to descend with the VOR. There we go, so I've selected VOR lock as the aircraft comes onto the VOR. This gives me an opportunity to prime up the 041 heading, which we'll be flying afterwards. And then I'll be taking manual as we come through the corner here. Kennedy traffic, Speedbird Concorde 1 on the Canarsie, sorry, on the Parkway visual runway 13 left, Kennedy. Setting the QNH for the runway. A little bit late there, but that's alright. And we'll keep the vertical speed coming down there. I'm going to take manual control at this point of the aircraft. You can see there we've got the highway running along on our left. Kennedy scenery a little bit bland here, unfortunately. Something we just have to deal with the basic scenery we've got at the moment. We allow the aircraft to continue slowing to 185 knots, 190-ish. I'm going to turn off all the autopilot systems and take full manual. We've got the road here on our left, which we're going to be following in as we go round for our approach. Raise my seating position a little bit here so I can see on this approach. We cross the road slightly on our turn here. If we have a look at the Avi tab, you can see we do that. Nice rain effects there on Concorde again. We're going to pitch up slightly just to allow the descent rate just to be exactly around 800 feet per minute or so. And then we start our right-hand turn rolling into the runway. Everything happens very quickly in Concorde at this point. So I'm just looking out for the runway on my right-hand side as it'll start to come into view quite quickly. I'm visually keeping the descent rate at about 500 feet per minute or so. Just trying to keep us coming down gently onto the runway. There we go, visual with the runway there. You see it off to our right. Down to 180 knots. That's all good. The auto throttle's still on at this point as we're just coming through 300 feet. I'm going to disable it there and take manual throttle. We're a little bit low, so I've just got to keep the altitude up here as we come over the threshold of the airfield. Bit of power there as it just boosts up there. And I've idled the throttle there as we come in over the threshold. Coming down in. And we're down. Reverse is deployed. We're allowing the nose to drop gently onto the runway. And sticks forward on the runway. 170 knots to start to apply the brakes. And bring the aircraft to a stop. Quite a slow stopping in Concorde, it doesn't like to slow down. As we continue our stop there, and we'll make our way onto the runway. And there we go. We've used up almost the entire runway here at Kennedy. It's quite a brief stop in Concorde. It always takes a bit of time. I can see we've got a lot of rain going on there on the nose. A lot of brakes there to make sure we do vacate indeed. It'll open the window once you land, just make sure you close it again. Especially in weather like this, you don't want to be having the window open. I'm going to raise the nose a notch and start to vacate right off the runway onto this taxiway. This is why Concorde has to be quite careful on these approaches, as we've used almost the entire runway here. And it's always quite interesting on 1-3 left, especially given our weight. We had a couple of passengers on board. And yeah, it's quite a quick aircraft on approach. Now we've entered the runway then, we'll bring the nose up as I've done, and we'll just turn off all the autopilot systems that we've got and just make our way slowly back down the runway. Unfortunately, my frames are a little bit low there as I've got a slightly older PC here, and we unfortunately disconnected. My landing as well, not the best you'll ever see. I don't praise myself for that, but hopefully the systems management you'll get the idea of there. Into the back then, we can set the engine control to normal and the limiter on engine 4 to 88%. At this point then we're going to be making our way back in to the runway. Concorde unfortunately does not have any wipers, and so we're just going to have to put up with the rain here. We'll continue across the runway here, as there's no traffic inbound. Visual inspection, we seem all good. Make sure our reheats are unarmed. And we're just making our way nicely into the airport. If you're very light on the aircraft, we've got only 9 tons of fuel. You could shut down engine 1 and 4 at this point to save on a little bit of fuel. Fortunately, well, with only 9 tons of fuel, we're quite light as well, so I don't think I need to do that. Checking the overhead then, we'll turn off our anti-collision lights, as there are strobe lights essentially, as we make our way gently in down the runway. We'll turn off all our landing lights and taxi lights on the bottom there, and continue on our way. We can trim the engineer now for ground, as this allows the aircraft to roll a little bit easier when we're on the ground here. It keeps everything moving nicely. Interesting approach there, certainly. I allowed the speed to run away with me a little bit on the approach, and I think it became a bit interesting, but again, we're just getting the idea for the feel of V3 of this Concorde and understanding it. With the new flight dynamics that have been introduced in Xplane 12, we're able to, Colimata were able to a lot more when they designed the aircraft, so they're able to provide some new features for landing and everything. We're entering left here into the stands here, as we're going to be going into T4, where Concorde used to park at the old British Airways terminal. Couple of wiggles we have to make here to get into the terminal. Often if you have rudder pedals, I'd recommend using differential braking when taxiing Concorde, as that makes things a little bit easier. The nose wheel is pretty pathetic when it comes to being able to control the steering. Gun it with a bit of power. You see lots of water effects shooting out the back of the aircraft. Oh no. Maybe. Oh, the rain stopped there, that's why. Throttling back, as I said, unfortunate that Kennedy's default scenery, but and that's just the way it's going to have to go. And we turn left onto stand here. Into our little corner of terminal here at Kennedy. All blast shields ahead of us. We're taking the final stand on our left. Lots of power were needed for Concorde around the corners, so just really increasing the throttle there. And there we go. Stand 1 on our left here. Bit of swing in, look, it's allowed us for a bit of a turn. Lots of power around the corner there to get us in. Bit of differential braking to help out with the nose wheel steering. The stand naturally has some lines, look, that's from the old Concordes, which gives us a good swing in. And at this point we'll be raising the nose. However, for Colimata, the replays require the aircraft to be in the state that it was. So for us, we're going to have to lower the nose for the replays we want to do at some point. There, I'm just getting us in line with the stand. A bit bouncy with my braking there. And there we go, we're stopped on stand. Welcome to Kennedy, ladies and gentlemen. At this point, we'll now be putting the parking brake on. Can't quite reach it. Do it on my hardware. Oh, he says that, he can't do it. There we go. Parking brake set, and we just turn off the high pressure valves for fuel on the overhead. Seatbelt signs can come off at this point, and your pressure set heaters and ADS and probe heaters can also go off. Your feed pumps in the back will be switched off, and the hydraulics for the engines can be switched off as well. There you go, make sure you click it twice. The gens can be turned off as well, and the electric SSB can be opened if you want to connect the ground power at this point. You can turn off your galley sheds and turn off your cross bleeds, and the boost conditioning valves can go off. Brilliant. Welcome to the stands, ladies and gentlemen. That was a beautiful flight there in Colimata's Concorde. Let's check out some replays. Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. This is Concorde on approach. This is just us landing here. Thank you very much to everyone who watched this video. A little interesting tutorial there. Just hope to get you started. I'm sure you'll find your own ways of continuing to fly this aircraft. So please let me know in the comments how that goes. And thank you very much to all of you for watching. I couldn't get the nose to lower fully for this tutorial as I shut down the engines, unfortunately. For this replay, sorry. So that's why it looks a little bit high. And remember, when you're landing it on the parkway visual, keep speed under control. Have a nice day, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.